Hello. It's funny, when I envisioned giving this presentation, I was in a much smaller room. But I'm not nervous at all. So I'm Heather Dodson. This presentation is actually, I've left an important word out, but it's actually Groundwater Data 101 presentation. Some of you may have seen Sam's panel discussion, Sam Hermit's panel discussion yesterday, where she mentioned that groundwater data was not sexy, but I disagree. And I think maybe she might not have attended a talk that Dr. Mace gave a couple years ago where he compared data sharing with having a threesome. So that's about as sexy as it gets. I know that being bug-free was an important component of both of those. I am the team lead for the Groundwater Data team, and the data team at Texas Water Development Board thinks that groundwater data is sexy. And speaking of sexy, let me put my glasses on so I can read. So our agency was created in the late 1950s, largely due to drought, and drought has pretty much continued to guide our directions since then. In the late 1990s, the regional planning areas were created in response to drought, and then in 2013, in the middle of our last drought, not counting the current one, SWIFT was implemented, which provided funds for projects that were looking at water shortages. Our agency relies on and funds the collection of groundwater and surface water data to support the science behind the planning. I'll kind of just borrow a quote from our recently former board member, Kathleen Jackson, where she said, "The better the data, the better the science, the better the science, the better the policy." That's kind of what drives us. And a couple of the programs, see if I can do this. A couple of the programs that we have are our data collection programs at the Texas Water Development Board. We have our water level measuring program, which also includes our network of real-time recorders. We have a water quality sampling program and our Springs initiative. And so we're going to kind of talk a little bit about each of these programs, starting with our water level monitoring program. So we measure water level depths in wells across the state. We typically, the Texas Water Development Board typically measures in cooler months when we have a better chance of measuring wells when they're not pumping. But we also, as groundwater conservation districts are get set up in the state, we encourage them to set up monitoring programs in their areas. So they contribute, as you'll see, quite a bit to our water level network. We have approximately 7,000 water level network wells and springs in 9 major and 22 minor aquifers, along with a few undesignated or local aquifers. And of those 7,000, we can zoom in, see if this will zoom in a little bit here. We measure between 1,500 and 1,700 of those sites, and groundwater conservation districts measure 5,000. So they do contribute a lot of the data that we have. What happens is the Texas Water Development Board covers a larger area of the state. So when you look at this, you can see groundwater conservation districts are kind of in the pinkish red color. 3/4 of the data that we have is provided by groundwater conservation districts, but it's only in 30% of the counties in the state, and then just about a little less than half of the aquifers. So we'd like to get, these programs established in counties and aquifers where there's not currently one, so that we can kind of improve that number. What's nice for us is that because the GCDs are local, typically once they have a monitoring program established, they measure a lot more wells in their counties than what we measure when we're measuring those counties. So we get a lot more data. We currently have, just real quick, I jumped too soon, but we have 65 GCDs that are currently have water level programs that are sharing data with us. So we have a good number. We'll always look to grow that number, but we've got a lot that are participating. And as part of our water level program, we do, like I said, we have our network of recorder wells. The GCDs also participate in this. You've got TWDB has about 103 recorder wells, and the districts have 108. The remainder are USGS sites. So we get a lot of data. I'm going to go ahead and make a distinction here because we're going to talk a little bit later more about the recorders, but this is typically referring to recorders that are using the GOES satellite transmission because that program, the real-time recorder equipment has really grown quickly over the last couple years. So we're going to talk more about that, but our goal is to have one recorder in every county in the state. And this map here is showing you the gray counties are counties that have no recorders. So that's our focus. Those are the counties that we'd really like to get recorders in. The blue counties are the ones that only have a single recorder in those. We have funding through TCEQ's Supplemental Environmental Program, which will allow us to fund adding recorders in these counties that don't have any recorders. There are some kind of requirements. The wells, they have to be unused. The equipment has to be pulled. I think they have to have previous water level measurements. And then there are a few exceptions where some counties that only have a single recorder, they qualify for getting a second recorder in there. So for this, and we're going to put up contact information at the end, but I recommend that you reach out to Andy Weinberg. He is our recorder team lead, and get in contact with him if you are in one of these gray counties and would like more information on how you can get recorders in your counties. Additionally, we're about to have some new funding from the USGS National Groundwater Monitoring Network. It's going to start in September, which is tomorrow, and it's going to provide funding to upgrade outdated recorder equipment. We have enough for 28 sites, and this is equipment that was originally purchased by GCDs that now the equipment's older, and so this is giving us some money where we can upgrade that new equipment. So we are encouraging districts that if you are interested, if you're in a gray county and interested in getting recorders, or if you maybe fall into the category of having some of this older equipment, to reach out. I know Andy probably already has a few of you on his sites to contact, but never hurts to just reach out and say you think you might fall into this category. This program is growing super fast, the recorder program. Just in the last 3 years, we've gone from 150 recorder wells to 250, and this is just referring to the ones that are on the GOES satellite transmission. In addition to that, groundwater conservation districts over the last few years have really been on the forefront of adding more of these real-time recorders that are using cellular transmission technology. And we have to confess the TWDB has lagged a little bit behind in keeping up with this technology. So it's great the GCDs have this technology out there and they're collecting all this data, and then we kind of drop the ball. We don't have a way to grab that data real time. Like with the GOES satellite transmission, the recorders are reading that information and it is being transmitted to our water data for Texas site, and you can see that daily, that information is being updated. With some of these other technologies, like you see here, the Well Intel, Scientific, OTT, a lot of these systems kind of have their own proprietary cloud servers, and so they each have their own different restrictions and how you can access data and how you can extract data, and so we just need to get caught up to look at how can we communicate, how can we work with this equipment so that we can get this data real time into our system. We are in the process of developing our own cloud network, our cloud servers that would be able to get this data in real time. This is in the very early stages. We're thinking it's going to cost about $3.50 per device per month, and we're hoping that when we get this up and running, this would be available to the groundwater conservation districts, and we're hoping that this might make this type of technology more accessible to more GCDs if it was a little bit more affordable. And then since it's on our own cloud servers, we would have access to the data. The one thing that I know we get asked a lot is this would eliminate the need for GCDs to download monthly, quarterly, annual reports and then send that data to us so that we could upload it. This would be basically a seamless transaction. The equipment would record it, it would get uploaded onto our server, and then the server would deliver it to our water data for Texas site. So that would, I know that would make both, I think, the districts and ourselves very happy if we could get something like that in place. So it's in the very early stages, and it's gonna, it's always dependent on the what kind of resources our ITT department has, but these are some of the things that we're working on. One of the things that we really wanted to use today is we know we need to do a better job with our communication and with our outreach with GCDs. Ideally, we would love to be like brought into the loop right as you're like purchasing this equipment and getting ready to install it. And that way we can kind of see, okay, what type of technology are you using? What kind of connections are there? What kind of limitations or restrictions might there be, so that we can kind of work out those kinks on our end, and that by the time that equipment is up and running and actually pulling in data, we're able to get it hopefully pretty quickly onto our website and get that data more seamlessly. So that's something that we're going to be working on, reaching out to GCDs, but we're also just asking, like, contact us if you're thinking about installing this type of equipment, so we can kind of see, we'll know more what we need to do on our end to be ready to handle that type of data. So we've collected all of this water level data. What do we do with it? Why are we collecting this data? How is it used? This data is used to both develop and calibrate our groundwater availability models. It's used to monitor progress toward desired future conditions, and several agencies, the TWDB and GCDs, can use this information to monitor their current resources, see how water levels are responding in periods of drought and in flood. One thing that has been mentioned at a couple of the talks at this conference is we've heard people talk about, would this information be made available to the public, so that, like, if they were looking to purchase a piece of property or a house, wouldn't they wanted to know what were the groundwater conditions like at the place where they were looking to purchase? That is a very common question, actually, that we get asked a lot at the Texas Water Development Board. So we get a lot of phone calls from people saying, got my eye on this property, I'm kind of ready to make an offer, but I just want to make sure that there's going to be water available if I purchase this property. So that data is used in that instance as well. We don't have a lot of, as also has been mentioned, with exempt wells, we don't have as much water level data, but we can definitely look at, like, what the conditions are around that place. And if they do have a well on the property, we can research and see if we can find a well log for it and kind of let them know at least, like, how deep the well is, where the pump is set, and that information. So that's just a couple of the ways that this data is being used. Next up is our water quality monitoring program. This, you can see, it's a little bit different from our water level. So the blue dots on here are the sites that the Texas Water Development Board monitors. The red dots are sites that Groundwater Conservation District sample, and then the green dots are sites that are measured by USGS. So this, while GCDs do participate in the water quality sampling program, it is to a lesser degree than the water level network. There's probably a couple reasons for this. I'm sure one is cost, because these analyses are expensive, and also priority. Water quality data doesn't always factor into priorities as much as, like, water level does. Some GCDs do have dedicated water quality sampling programs, and they're already sharing that data with us, which we really appreciate. If you are interested in starting a water quality monitoring program, or if you already have one but maybe you're not sharing the data with us, please get in contact with us. We definitely would love to have your data. We will work to make getting that data from you to us and upload it as painless as possible. And we periodically have funding available where we can help kind of offset the cost of analyses. We are currently pretty tapped out with our resources, but we still encourage you to contact us. If we don't have resources at the moment, we can at least kind of look at which, who is interested in this type of program, so that when money becomes available, we know who to reach out to. And you never know, on a case-by-case basis, we might actually have enough funding available for what you're looking to do. So just encourage you to reach out to us so we can work together to get this data. We'll go on. So you can see the numbers. It's kind of interesting because the number of sites that the Texas Water Development Board samples compared to what the Groundwater Conservation Districts are sampling, it's actually not that different in looking at the numbers. It looks like we're kind of measuring almost the same number of sites. But again, when you kind of break this down, while the Texas Water Development Board is sampling about 60% of the sites, we're in 84% of the counties and in just over half of the aquifers. So it's another place where we would just like to expand. If we could grow this program in the counties, we seem to be kind of, right now, it's kind of heavily focused on, like, the Central Texas area and the Hill Country. If you're in those areas, please still reach out to us. We don't want to exclude you guys, but we would like to expand it and grow beyond that as well. So if you're in an area that you didn't see on the map, and you either have a program or you're interested in one, please reach out to us. And so what are we typically sampling for in the water quality analysis? We actually characterize the results in light of drinking water standards. So when we report the results, they are reported as exceedances of standard primary and secondary drinking water standards. But that's not actually what we're interested in. We're not really looking at the drinkability of the water, just happens to be how we characterize it. We're really looking to, we don't enforce, even though we report it in terms of drinking water standards, we don't enforce those standards and we don't report that information to TCEQ. We are primarily looking for major ions and trace elements, minerals, metals, that yes, in certain concentrations can be considered contaminants, but we're really trying to just kind of characterize the chemical makeup of the groundwater. So that's what we're doing with these samples. We do not determine man-made pollution. So we're not looking at like organic compounds that might be introduced as part of like oil and gas, or if it's like chlorination disinfection products. So we really do not address man-made pollution. We do occasionally sample for isotopes, like we'll do tritium, carbon-14, oxygen-34, which helps to determine the age of the groundwater. So on occasion we do those. They're expensive, so we don't do those all the time, but periodically we will sample for that. And then our Springs Initiative, this is a new program. It was just started in 2020. Sorry, 20 years behind. In 2020, we started this program. This was, the purpose of this is that we were looking to implement a systematic, routine data collection, inventory, and analysis of springs data. Unlike our water level and water quality programs, we really didn't have a springs network. It's not something, our water level and water quality data goes back to the 1960s. Some of it even goes back older than that. We really didn't have that for springs. It's not something, we have a lot of historical data, but it's not a program that we were routinely monitoring on a regular basis. They are the least studied of Texas's water resources, but they really do provide an important component of groundwater and surface water interaction. So we're really looking to build this program up. Like I said, it's new, it's in its infancy. It's only been in place for a couple of years. Initially, our network right now, I think it's like 12 to 16 springs that we're sampling and measuring flow on. And we've been measuring these every year for the first few years, but we're probably kind of stretch our resources. We're looking to switch this program more to like our water quality for wells, and so maybe look at like a 4-year cycle where we will focus on one or just a few aquifers each year, and I just realized I probably forgot to mention this on the water quality portion, but our water quality sampling program is on a 4-year basis. So we're water levels, we measure our wells, we try to measure all of our water level network wells once a year. With water quality, the Texas Water Development Board's water quality program, we do it on a 4-year cycle. So we focus on one or a few aquifers every year, and then over the course of 4 years, we cover the whole state and sample everything. So we're looking to kind of do something with our springs. That way it'll kind of stretch our resources a little bit, allow us to grow the program. And also, we know that really the best way for us to grow this program is if we can work in cooperation with groundwater conservation districts that might have springs in their area, or if you're interested in looking at doing an inventory of the springs in your area and collecting data. Everything's travel. We have limited resources as far as financial resources for this, but the Texas Water Development Board can provide training on how to measure spring flow data and how to collect spring flow samples. And we're also kind of playing around with the idea of installing transducers on some springs, so we can get some real-time information. So if that's something that you're interested in, anything with the Springs program, if this is something that you're interested in implementing in your districts, please reach out to us. Or if you have springs data, we are currently receiving some springs data from groundwater conservation districts. This is probably to the lesser degree of even water levels and water quality, but there are some districts that are currently routinely monitoring springs and sharing that data with us. So if you are already doing this, we really appreciate it. And if you're collecting data on springs, but you haven't shared it with the Texas Water Development Board, please reach out. We would love to have your data. And then, and if not, but you're really interested in maybe, looking at a Springs program, please reach out. We don't know if we'll have money, but we would help out in any way. We just think, kind of combining our resources can really help each of us kind of grow these programs. Okay, so if at this point I have successfully talked you into joining our cult of groundwater data cooperators, maybe the next question that you have is, how do you submit this data? So you're going to collect it. How would you submit this data? We have a whole process that probably the best way is to contact us, and we can kind of let you know all the ins and outs of how to submit data to us. But we've also created a website for submitting data, and it's got all kinds of resources, has answers to questions that you might have. It has templates for how to submit the data, and it also has where to find the data. It's like something really important. It has resources for where you can find the data after you've submitted it. Once we've uploaded it, where can you go and see this data where it's publicly available? So one other thing I'll mention real quick, we're thinking about over the next year is that we've been thinking about maybe putting together a tutorial for how to house and format data. We accept all groundwater data in pretty much any format, but we really prefer Excel. We know everybody's not experienced in working with Excel, so if this is something that you'd like more information on, and just even if you're familiar with Excel, but maybe you're curious about some of the tips, tricks, best practices, we're looking into maybe putting together like a webinar tutorial over the next year. So if that's something you'd be interested in, reach out to us. We're just kind of in the early stages of maybe looking into putting something like that together that might be helpful. I'll run through really quick. This is our tips for data submissions, or how to stay on our good side. And really all this is how to avoid getting an annoying email from us asking what's up with this well. And so the first one that we have is, please don't reuse state well numbers. And this is in the case of where you've been monitoring a well and now that well is no longer measurable for one reason or another. It's going to be dropped from the program, but there's another well nearby that you're going to add as a replacement. There's a couple things with this. We would require that that well gets a new state well number. If you're going to reuse your GCD well number, if you're just going to transfer that number over to the new well, we actually don't have a problem with that. We try not to interfere too much with your internal processes. What works for you is great. We want you to do that. But with state well numbers, we kind of have a rule. It's like one hole, one state well number. Occasionally it's one hole, two state well numbers if it's a dual completion, but it's never two holes, one state well number. So we'll need to assign a new state well number when you're doing this. So there's a couple things with this, and in addition to not reusing, but please let us know if you're dropping a program from dropping a well from the program, because we get it on your spreadsheets and we're adding information, and then all of a sudden we just see like, oh, it's been a couple years and there's no data. We don't really know what happened. Is this a well that you just stopped measuring, or is it one that you might start measuring again? We have different codes in our database for how we kind of know which ones are current observation wells and that. So let us know if you're dropping it, and then provide as much information as you can on the new well so that we can get a state well number assigned, but also things like aquifer information are really helpful, because that's how we get our performance measures through the legislature. So if we know what aquifer it's in, that helps get information. So send that data to us. Include full dates with the measurements, like month, day, year. If you don't know, if it's older data and you really don't have the full date, that's okay. We have a means of dealing with that in our database. But if it's one that you've just measured, if you can provide a full date, month, day, year, we do occasionally get submissions with just the month and the year. And it's always better if we can get the full date on that. So if you can include full dates and then provide comments. I know the internet, social media gives comments a bad name because they tend to lean a little negative, but in this case, we actually like comments when they're negative, because that's usually when we have the questions, is when we see if there's a large discrepancy between the previous measurement and the current one. We want to know, like, what's going on, what's happening with this. Was the well pumping when you took the measurement, or had it just pumped, you just turned it off when you took the measurement? Or is it an area, maybe the well wasn't pumping, but it's in an area of high pumping? And also in the other direction, maybe it's a well that had been used in the past but is no longer being used, so we get crazy where the water level has increased even in dry years. And so it's like, what's going on with this? So typically, that's what's going on with that. So I think that's all I had. That is it. The last thing is, we know the scariest words that anybody ever hears is, we're from the government, we're here to help. But we appreciate, like I said, I hope the one thing that was clear from this presentation is that groundwater conservation districts provide us with a lot of data. We would be hard pressed to meet our legislative performance measures without the data that the GCD provides. Of course, we would love more involvement and be able to grow this program even more and grow these programs even more, but the main thing is, we really are here to help. We love talking with you guys. If you have pretty much any questions, suggestions, comments, that's the big one, is we know we've got ways that we can improve. We know we've kind of fallen short in some areas. And so we always welcome those suggestions on how we can make your lives easier, things that would help you guys out, or things that you'd like to see us get more involved in. This is a very busy slide. I love technology. Everybody's taking pictures. So I'm going to leave this one up there for a while, so that this is a lot of information. I've got the contact information for the data team, which is myself and Amy DeLuna. And so there's our email and our phone numbers. The recorder data team lead is Andy Weinberg, and so he's who you should contact if you're interested or have any questions about the recorder program. Cody Bjornson is our springs and our water level program person, so please contact him. Water quality is Philip, and then I've got the websites for how to submit data and also for our springs initiative. So that's it, which is perfect. I'm getting the stop sign. So.